You're listening to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, featuring guests who take the scientific talk about food and break it down for practical use. You've heard the phrase, you are what you eat. Come find out what that really means. Experience conversations with experts in the field of nutrition and understand the power of food for our health, well-being, and beyond. Now, here's your host, registered dietitian and nutritionist, Mathea Ford.
Hi there, it's Mathea. Welcome back to the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast featuring nutrition experts who are leading the way. Using Food starts today, right now, with our next guest. It's great to have Julie Harrington on the show today. Julie, welcome to Nutrition Experts. I'm excited to have you on the show today and share your expertise with my tribe.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be chatting with everyone.
Great, Julie. I love what you're doing. You're a chef and a dietitian. And of course, being a foodie that I am, I think that's the best combination. But can you tell my listeners a little more about you and what you do?
Yep. So I am, like you just said, I'm a chef and a dietitian, and that's a little unique in the nutrition world. I went to Johnson & Wales University, and my degree is in culinary nutrition. And then I went on to do my dietetic internship. What I really have a passion about is educating about nutrition through food. So what does it taste like? What does it look like? How can we make this to fit in with my nutrition? That's really where my passion is. What I do is I am a culinary nutrition consultant. I have my own website and business, Julie Harrington.Com, where I write recipes, provide cooking tips, and nutrition education. I do a lot of recipe development for myself and other brands. I do a little bit of freelance writing, some media work. My main thing that I really love to do is teach cooking classes. They're very hands-on and it really gets everyone involved. And then I do some presentations in the community and some corporate wellness. So a little bit of everything. So when everyone asks me, like, what do you do? I'm like, a lot.
Yeah. Where should I start?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's start with talking about being in the kitchen, because I know that people tend to sometimes avoid cooking because either they didn't do it when they were a kid, they didn't see their parents doing it, and that type of thing. So they just lack confidence in their skills. What are some things that people are typically concerned about in the kitchen, and how can they improve their confidence with those?
So a lot of the times, this is what I really break down that barrier in the cooking classes, is building that kitchen confidence back up. Because everyone starts somewhere. So you have to just be confident of where your starting point is. What do you want to accomplish? Kitchen confidence can mean a lot of different things for many people. What happens is I ask them, like, what do you want to start with? Do you cook at all at home? Do you own any kitchen equipment? There's some people who don't even own the chef knives in their kitchen. That's one barrier that we need to break. How are you going to start cooking if you don't have a cutting board and a knife to start chopping? So really just starting small and start where you're at. I have some people who are really involved in the kitchen and they're just looking for new ideas and new meal prep methods or recipes to work on. But if you're starting with someone who doesn't go grocery shopping on a weekly basis, relies on a lot of takeout, where can we start small to slowly incorporate these new kitchen habits and this kitchen confidence that you could actually make these foods at home?
So it's really helping people to understand that there's a system, a process. Do you work with them on understanding recipes or how they work?
Yep. So I always say a recipe is a guide. You can put your own twist on it. I have some people who come to my classes that follow the recipe to a T, to exact measurements at all times. But I have some people who want to adjust the recipe based on their preference. And it's all about how you want to cook. How do you enjoy the experience? Are you not confident enough to make those changes? And that's fine. I have some, like, for instance, my sister is super type A. So when she looks at a recipe, she needs to follow it exactly. Whereas I'm a little bit more free-spirited and I'm like, oh, a little pinch of that. I'll maybe change the cooking time a little bit. I would like to add a new ingredient in there. So it really depends on what your style is too.
Me, it's usually like I look in the drawer and in this cabinet and I don't have that spice. So I'm like, what spice can I use that will fix it? Will be the same.
Exactly. And then sometimes it's like the end of the week and you have random ingredients and you feel like you're on an episode of Chopped. What can you do with your mystery basket ingredients?
Yeah. Oh, Chopped. Oh, yeah. Thinking about like knives, cutting boards, equipment to have in the kitchen, what are some basic things that people need to have or should have in their kitchen to be able to make most recipes? Equipment.
You just need the essentials. So a cutting board, really the two knives that I do recommend everyone having is a utility or a chef's knife and a paring knife. You don't need all those different like boning knives or fillet knives. If you don't need those fancy things. You could accomplish that same task with a chef knife and a paring knife. Obviously, cutting board if you're going to be doing some chopping. A couple different sizes of pots and pans. Keeping it super basic. You don't need a fancy pizza cutter. This one woman was like, well, I don't have a pizza cutter. I'm like, a knife can cut that.
Yeah, they cut it before they invented the pizza cutter. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's good to know that you can get started with just simple equipment. So with meal prep, if you're thinking about getting your meals ready for the week or that type of process, if you're thinking ahead instead of like opening the door to the fridge and going, oh, I got chicken and broccoli. Okay, guess we're having chicken and broccoli. How do you make it easier?
So I do offer meal plans as part of one of my services. So if you really want to take the guesswork out of everything, I pre-populate a full meal plan for you and it generates into a grocery list that you're also able to customize. So you can move recipes in and out based off of preferences or how many times you know you will be cooking. So that's always an option. But then when people tell me they never meal plan or prep, I'm like, do you ever go grocery shopping? You're a meal planner because you had to think about something that you want to buy to put in your kitchen. So maybe you're not thinking of the next step of what am I going to make with it? And that's okay. But starting that wheel of thinking of these foods are going to be in my kitchen. I bought chicken. I'm going to make something with chicken. You're starting to meal plan a little bit. So now what are the steps, the simple steps that you could maybe take to get it prepared a little bit more easily for the week? So I work with a lot of clients in community presentations explaining that you don't have to spend your whole Sunday making this grocery list and Googling and Pinteresting all these different recipes. Just finding ways to make it easier for yourself and having yourself ready to go for the week.
Yeah, I always... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I always think about trying to make sure that I have the basics in the kitchen and that they're ready where I can use them instead of always planning meals because things always come up or I just...
Or you could get like an ingredient at the grocery store too. Like you can't let that throw off your whole meal for that night.
Right. You can't call for pizza just because you don't have onion.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do chefs know that other people don't know about meal prep?
You can cheat. You don't have to buy everything fresh and like, so for example, sometimes I buy pre-cooked grains like the frozen quinoa. If I don't I'm going to be limited on time, I might buy it or I might prep the whole bag of quinoa in advance so I have quinoa for the week. But they make frozen quinoa and frozen brown rice and all these different frozen grains now. So that really takes out the work there. Another little cheat method, I do buy the pre-portioned salmon fillets sometimes or the pre-portioned pieces of chicken. So I only have to take out what I need. Little things like that. You don't have to cook from scratch all the time. But a lot of my meal prep tips come from just getting things started. It's not necessarily cooking all your meals for the week. I actually don't recommend that. You see these like pretty pictures on Instagram or Pinterest of these people pre-packaging and pre-portioning all of their meals. It looks fantastic, great, but after eating the same thing over and over again each week, you're going to get bored of that food. And what if you're not in the mood for that food anymore? The ways that I like to say is like start the prep process because think about the broccoli that you buy. You buy a head of broccoli and now it comes to be Wednesday evening. The head of broccoli is staring you in the face, still wrapped in cellophane with a rubber band around it. And you get home from a long day. What's going to happen with that broccoli? It's probably going to stay there. So the day you buy it, I trim it into the florets, I wash it, and then it's ready to go in a produce bag. These little mesh produce bags I really love because they're breathable and they're not going to trap a lot of moisture in there and turn your produce quickly after you washed and prepped them. So now that broccoli Wednesday, it's trimmed in florets. So now that can be turned into a stir fry. You can easily steam it. You can throw it on a pan to roast. And you just took out all that prep time during the middle of the week.
Yeah, with just that, you're not even knowing what you're going to use that broccoli for, but you know you need it in this condition in order to do the next thing.
I do that with a lot of lettuce, any of like the produce, because that does take some time. You do have to trim things, or maybe I'll even throw a marinated mason jar that it will eventually go into something, maybe chicken or tofu or some salmon, but it's just kind of a general Asian style marinade that I just threw in a mason jar. It will go on something.
Yeah. Or like I've cut up onions ahead of time, diced them up, keep them in the freezer. And then when I'm ready to use them, they thaw fairly quickly. Same thing with green peppers. So.
Oh, and totally utilize your freezer. So again, last week I bought raspberries at the farmer's market and I didn't go through them fast enough. Don't waste them. Just freeze them and you can come back to them later.
Yeah, they're so small they thaw easy, or you can put them in a smoothie or something. So that all can build up your confidence if you know you have, instead of going, I'm not ready, you can be like, okay, I've got the ingredients here. Let's look at them and make something.
And the key is having your environment set up for that. If you don't go food shopping, if you're not putting these foods into your kitchen, then how do you expect to do anything? You're going to open an empty fridge.
Thinking about different ingredients that people use, like we were talking about raspberries and broccoli and that stuff. What's an ingredient you use a lot that other people would be surprised by?
Two ways to answer this question. One of more of a culinary ingredient that I like to use a lot is chickpea miso. So miso is usually a fermented soybean, but this is a fermented chickpea. And I use it a lot to thicken sauces instead of making a roux. And it also adds a really nice savory kind of taste to your dishes. Not as common. I use it in soup recipes though too, instead of using broth sometimes because I don't always have it on hand. And it's a fermented product, so it has those benefits of probiotics. Unfortunately, when you heat it, those probiotics get killed off. But I do use it also in dressings to thicken up like a vinaigrette. So that is not heated. So that actually keeps those probiotic benefits. So that's more of like a unique culinary ingredient. But a lot of times people are surprised that I do use box pancake mix. Not going to lie. I honestly love this one brand, Kodiak Cakes. Have you ever tried that?
No, I have not.
They're really good, and it's just so convenient sometimes when I just want to make a quick like pancake or waffle. I'll mash in a banana or something with it, but it really just saves a lot of time.
Yeah, we use, well, I'm in Oklahoma, but we use Bisquick or Pioneer brand. But to make pancake mix, you have to have, I guess you don't have to have self-rising flour because you can use baking soda, baking powder type stuff.
On a weekday, I'm not really in the mood to do that from scratch.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed about it. Like I do these cheat methods all the time. People are like, you don't cook from scratch all the time. I'm like, I'm human. I have a busy life. Like I'm still eating great foods, nutritious food. It's just, I'm taking all these shortcuts.
That's an excellent message to give people, that it doesn't matter if you use a few little things that help you. If it's going to mean that you're going to, at the end of the day, eat a more nutritious meal because you made it at home and you controlled the ingredients and you tailored it to what you wanted.
People feel a lot of guilt around food, and we need to break that barrier. You're fueling your body. I had one client recently who was like ashamed that she was using frozen vegetables. And I'm like, why? Frozen vegetables are fine. They are flash frozen. They're actually locking in the nutrition. Like I always want to focus on the food positives. There's always a positive that comes with fueling your body. And of course, a vegetable, it's nutritious. So why should you feel guilty about that?
Yeah, and you can have them all year long and they're lower sodium. And
exactly. Keep them stocked in your freezer to have them at any time.
Yeah, but I could understand how culturally, maybe if she grew up that different. Any ideas for thinking about ingredients like shopping at farmers markets? You got any tips for people if they want to go to a farmer's market, how they might find good food?
Pretty much anything you find at a farmer's market is really great because it's all going to be seasonal. Eating in season is really great to add variety to your diet when it changes each season. So that's always awesome. And usually it's very affordable because it's in season, it's readily available. It's really coming from a short distance of traveling. I usually stock up a lot and then figure out ways to either freeze it or make it last a lot longer. So back to the berries. Berries are so much more affordable this time of year, fresh berries. So I usually buy like a big bulk bin of them and I'll freeze them. The strategy though to freeze them that I always tell everyone to do is you wash them and you dry them. Find a sheet tray, but put a line of parchment paper down first and then freeze them all in one layer. So once they're fully frozen, then put them into little baggies or containers to put in your freezer. This prevents them from all clumping together and then you just have one big mass of berries or something all just stuck.
Oh, that's great. So then you can just take out a smaller amount instead of having the whole chunk. So as long as you do it pretty quick, you freeze them and then you take them out, put them in the bag. They're not getting the freezer burn or
correct.
Any sort of damage. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great tip. I love it. Yeah, just spend that time right after you get home from the farmer's market, get them cleaned up and freeze them and you're ready to go for later.
I've even done that with vegetables as well. People only think about that for fruit. I had a lot of zucchini left over last week too that was starting to turn. So I chopped it up, I steamed it, I let it cool, and then I did that same freezing process. So the steamed zucchini, I added it into a soup. I already threw it into a smoothie. I know it's not as common to put zucchini in a smoothie, but it's actually delicious. You don't really taste it. But you can turn your vegetables into new ways as well.
Great. Those are great tips. I think also going to a farmer's market, you get to talk to the people who grew the food or who are close to growing the food. And you can even learn more about different food in your area that you might be interested in. So you may see something that you don't see normally in the grocery store. You see it, you're willing to try it, and you've gotten a little more variety in your diet.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's so nice to talk to them because they're so passionate about what they do. And you just see that excitement and they are so proud of what they produced and what they're providing that's now going to be on your kitchen table.
So knowing that you do a lot of meal planning, what are some meal planning strategies that you can share with the audience?
So again, back to you don't have to have every single meal figured out. You just kind of have to think of different categories. So I usually think about 3 dinners that incorporate a certain ingredient and how I can utilize the other ingredients to make other meals. So for instance, like that batch of quinoa, I'll make quinoa because I purposely want to put it with maybe the salmon, but how else can I use that quinoa later on? Oh, I threw it on a salad for lunch, or I actually mixed it with oatmeal for breakfast. So different ways to utilize that one product. You don't have to eat a brand new thing every single day.
When I managed the kitchen, I would always write the menu and we would use the same chicken breast for 5 or 6 different meals. I wasn't going to go buy, bone-in chicken, this type of chicken, that type of chicken. Just buy chicken breast and use it, 5, 10 different ways. Or same thing with cuts of meat. Typically, you can kind of use them in different recipes.
Yeah, definitely. And don't be afraid to utilize leftovers. Another example recently, I made just a grilled chicken for one meal, and that turned into 2 more meals. I added it to a salad for lunch, and then we also cut it up and put it and made chicken quesadillas another night.
Yeah, we had turkey last night for dinner, and I was thinking I'm going to shred that turkey up that's left and make like a little, like you said, like a sandwich type thing. So how does meal planning, even just doing the small, simple changes, how does that help someone to eat healthier?
I think it takes away the stress around mealtime, just because you're preparing your environment you're just preparing your environment. It's like walking into a sporting game without any equipment on for that sport. You're kind of like just winging it and like you're going to get injured, or you're just kind of out in the open. What do I do now? So the same thing goes for your kitchen environment. You want to have things stocked up so you can feel comfortable like walking in after a long day and I can put something together for dinner. And just making sure that it's something that you enjoy too. When people tell me, oh, they're meal prepping and they hate what they're making, why are you making it then? Don't force yourself to eat something you don't enjoy and you don't like. Focus on making sure the meals are delicious, something that satisfies you too. If it's not satisfying you, that's not going to do anything good for you long term because you're going to feel deprived.
Yeah, you're not going to want to eat that long term. And, thinking of healthier diet, and we've talked a little bit about farmers markets and stuff. And I know you help people focus on a more plant-based diet or plant-focused diet. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you can help people incorporate that more into their menu without necessarily being vegetarian?
Yep, definitely. So I like the term that you use. I definitely I say that as well. Plant focus doesn't mean 100% plant-based, but everyone can use a little more plants within their daily routine. A lot of times when we talk about plants, people automatically only assume vegetables, but here we're talking about the fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, any plant product, whole grains, or just regular grains in general. And I always like to challenge everyone to start with at least 50% of your plate being focused on plants, and then try to even get to 75% of your plate focused on plants. So different ways you can go about doing that is, I don't really like to say sneaking them in, because I don't like that. Kind of has a negative tone to it, that you're kind of hiding them. Kind of add them in where you can. Going back to that pancake mix that I like to use, I like to boost it up a little bit instead of just having the pancake, because I know that one pancake using the batter is not going to satisfy me because there's not enough fiber in there. So I mash up a banana. I might add some blueberries in there. I like to smear some peanut butter on it instead of using maple syrup, because now you're incorporating more food groups and you're also incorporating more plants, and you have a more well-balanced meal out of it. So the same thing can go for any meal. Like, how can you fit in more plants without really needing to put in any more effort, and something that is enjoyable for you? Smoothies are such an easy way to add more plants. You can add more veggies into it. You can add chia seeds or flax seeds for another plant source. Focusing on, again, your dinner plate. A lot of times we lead with, like, when people say, what's for dinner? Everyone usually always leads with the animal source of protein. Oh, we're having chicken. Okay, but what else is with that? Let's focus on the plants, because the chicken shouldn't be the star of the plate. That should maybe only take a little section of your plate, but the rest can be focused on those plants.
Once you start eating different plants and eating them more often, you start to really enjoy them and the ways you can cook them. So I love that.
And also, too, adding more variety. What happens a lot of times, too, is we get stuck on the same things. Of course, if you're just munching on an apple every day for an afternoon snack, that's going to get boring after a while. But what if you're not ready to change to a new piece of fruit? How many varieties of apples are there when you walk into the grocery store? Maybe even just trying to switch up the variety that you're having.
That's a good tip. Speaking of the grocery store, when you're grocery shopping, I know you do probably a decent amount of this as well. Do you think it's better to shop once a week or more often? And how do you navigate the grocery store?
So I love this question, because before I started my own business, I worked as a supermarket dietitian. So my job was in the grocery store. I feel like I can navigate any grocery store really well now, being in that kind of environment. So when we're talking about grocery shopping, I really do recommend shopping at least once a week to get all your essentials for the week. I typically go maybe twice, even 3 times a week, just because my work requires me to, where I'm developing a recipe. I'll need to buy some different ingredients and what's in my typical day of pattern of eating. Navigating the grocery store, there's all those things of saying, oh, only shop the perimeter. I don't really agree with that. There's so many great things up and down the aisles as well. People always say only the processed foods in the aisles, but processed is another word that we really need to start adding more of a positive twist. Not all processed food is created equally. There's actually, according to the FDA standards, there's all different levels of what processed foods are. So peanut butter, for example, that's technically a processed food. They're taking peanuts, they're grinding it, they're packaging it. That's processed. Your tuna, same thing. But then also there's the ultra processed foods that I don't even know half those ingredients are. So that's a processed food as well. But all of those items are in the aisle. So I don't say skip the aisles. Really learn how to read a label properly, working with the dietitian. A lot of dietitians offer grocery store tours. So if you're really confused, maybe take that up as an option. So many times we are set in our ways. We're set in our same pattern of shopping at the grocery store. And I noticed that firsthand when I started working there. How many times you walk by all these great products, but you don't even notice them because you're so on autopilot to get your grocery shopping done. Kind of take a moment, maybe find some new foods or new items that could appear in your grocery cart. I have a series called Grocery Store Finds. Every month I highlight about 5 products that just appeared in my cart just to say and to show people, oh, this is a new product I found. You might like it too.
So when you're thinking about navigating the store, how do you recommend people go through? Because I've heard different things like do the produce last, do, like you said, don't do the inner aisles, that type of thing. But so how do you, when you think about navigating, where do you recommend to start and kind of go through?
I do recommend starting in the produce section. The grocery store is strategically set up in the way that it is for you to walk in and like usually the first thing you go to is the produce department. You walk right into the produce department. And there's a reason for that. They want you to start off getting your fresh produce. But as a dietitian and a chef, I want you to really have your plants be the focus. So starting with that fresh produce is fantastic. And then notice how you're walking around the perimeter. That's where all of like your meats and your protein, your seafood department, and then your dairy department. They want you to hit all those in that order because then at the end, that's when you get to the cashier where you're putting all your cold stuff at the end. So they strategically do that for you to shop that way. But I always just say start in the produce because, again, we want to be a little bit more plant focused and really just work off your grocery list. I don't think there's necessarily a foolproof method of you need to shop these sections first and last.
So do you ever do like the online ordering? I know that's becoming more popular. Do you ever do that, or do you think that's a good idea?
It really depends on the day of the week. I use the online grocery shopping a lot for when I have my big cooking classes because it, number one, just saves me time. I don't shop for a big family right now, so I don't mind doing my own personal grocery shopping on my own because it doesn't take me that long. But for busy families, online grocery shopping is awesome. At first, I was like, I like picking out my produce. I don't want anyone else picking out my produce. Or I like picking out my meat. Or I'm very specific when it comes to certain things. But the grocery store near me does such a fantastic job. I just write little notes throughout my order saying, for instance, like I got avocado the one day. I shopped online. And I said, please make sure that it's ripe and ready to eat. Because I knew that I would be needing it for a recipe the next day. I love it, honestly, because it saves you a lot of time. And it really just depends on what your lifestyle is, what your preference is.
I think it saves a little money, too, because you're not walking up and down the aisles and going, oh, yeah, maybe I should get that. Maybe I should get that.
You can actually really stick to your grocery list. And also another cool thing about that is, too, that I come across coupons that I don't even know were available at that moment. Where I'll be shopping for something and they're like, would you like to add this $2 off coupon? Of course I will to save money.
Yeah, thank you. I always ask my guests, what is their favorite food?
Oh, this is always my hardest question to answer. But if there's a food that I pretty much eat every day, it's peanut butter in some form. So I'm going to go with peanut butter as my answer.
Okay. I love peanut butter too. It's good. Do you like chunky or creamy or what?
I always have both on hand. I guess I'm like a nut butter fanatic. Right now, I probably have at least 4 different jars open.
Well, that's very interesting. I just came back from the International Food Bloggers Conference and we saw some different foods. And one of them was a new nut butter that has sunflower seeds. It's basically targeted towards people with peanut allergy.
Is it sun butter?
Sun butter. Yeah, I think that is.
Oh yeah, that one's good. I use that in my kids' cooking classes a lot since there's usually a nut allergy.
Yeah, so that's an awesome product. It was really good. Does it have like quinoa in it? Am I crazy?
There's one with quinoa in it? That's really cool.
Yeah, so there's lots of varieties of nut butters. It doesn't always have to be just peanut butter, but yeah. I just recently learned, I did not realize that sunflower seeds are not necessarily like they're okay for people with a peanut allergy. Julie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. I know my listeners learned a lot about just different kitchen confidence, choosing different things and trying to spice up their diet a little. So if listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can find me directly from my website, julieharrington.rd.com. I have a contact page where you can directly email me, or on social media, I am at chefjulie_RD.
Great. Well, guys, this has been another great episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast, the podcast that is all about learning more so you can do more with nutrition in your life.
You've just listened to an episode of the Nutrition Experts Podcast. Be sure to get more information about this week's episode at www.nutritionexpertspodcast.com. Tune in next time for another great conversation with a nutrition expert and expand your personal knowledge in the field of nutrition, one conversation at a time.